Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and I'm going to tell you up front that this is going to be a two-part video. Why? Well, because I think the content is sufficient to justify it. You see, as always, and I will make it clear why this video is being made up front, I've always told people if you pick up a hard copy of The World Below RPG and you contact me through MatthewDawkins.com, you can request a video of your choice. It's very rare that I give someone two videos as a result of this, but I have got a Patreon and customer and someone who has picked up a copy of The World Below in the form of, and I'll just give their handle, 3D Uranium. And 3D Uranium asked me essentially for an update video. Some of my most popular old videos were, what's the best game you've ever run, what's the worst game you've ever played, that kind of thing. People like that kind of storytelling, and it helps provide recommendations. Now, he wanted to know what is the best game I've ever run or played since then. Since my previous video of something like 10 or 15 years ago. And naturally, I have ran a lot of games, more than I've played, but I have ran a hell of a lot of games. I've played a pretty good number of games. I still run games every week for my local group. I still run games every week for different Patreon groups, which are now, I think, numbering 13 different groups a month. So I am running an awful lot. And being able to pick out which ones are my favourites are tricky. So that's why this is a two-parter, because we are going to have the best games I've ran, and then the best games I've played. This one is the best games I've ran. And you may say, well, surely that's up to the players to decide. Well, yes, it is. I agree completely. But this is my take. This is the ones I've had the most enjoyment running. So we're going to start with Slay Industries 2nd Edition. I've been running Slay Industries 2nd Edition on and off for my in-person gaming group, as well as two different Patreon groups, as well as Red Moon role-playing. And Slay Industries is one of my favourite settings. It absolutely drips with flavour, along with the constant rainfall that afflicts Mort City. And it is a setting that my in-person gaming group and my Patreon groups and the Red Moon role-playing group all immediately just understood. As soon as the world was illustrated for them, as soon as I explained what the world of Slay Industries was, the world of progress, Mort City, the cannibal sectors, the permanently on television sets, the shivers patrolling the streets, the gang warfare, all of that, they got it. They understood. Glasgow meets the Running Man. They got it. And this really helped them come up with characters that perfectly fit within that setting, completely jived with every single suggestion I came up with for, things that could be going on, what might be going on with BPNs, the missions you undertake in Slay Industries. And in particular, my in-person group, we've had two long-lasting characters. Other operatives have come and gone, died, retired, mostly died. Retire would be a nice way to put it when you get massacred in the cannibal sectors. One of whom is a Malice 313 Stormer by the name of KitchenAid 4.7 litre Hibiscus, I think. I believe I've got the measurement right. There's a story there. And an advanced carrion by the name of Periwinkle. These are the two longest lasting characters, and their adventures as operatives, along with their various operative teammates who have fallen by the wayside, have seen them undertake blue BPNs in the sewers and street hostilities, trying to clamp down on gang activity. They have been hunted by contract killers and taken them out for the bounties on their heads. They have explored the deep levels of downtown. They have taken silver BPNs and appeared on celebrity chat shows, often to disastrous effect. They have taken a green BPN and gone off-world to a conflict planet where some of the conflict races are still extant, despite classification claiming otherwise. They have undertaken red emergency BPNs. They undertook a black suicide BPN, heading out to Cannibal Sector 1 to take out an ex-war criminal. They got about halfway before turning around and leaving. They have done a hell of a lot. It's been a long campaign, and it's one I have enjoyed a huge amount. We had a break in this campaign and have been running, what were we running? Cold War Cthulhu again. Which is another game I enjoy a great deal. Sadly discontinued. I don't know if you can buy it legally at this point. But we have now just gone back to Slay Industries because everyone enjoyed it so much. So this is a relatively recent one in the last couple of years, but there has been nothing but good feelings about Slay Industries in my group. No one ever complains about the system. No one ever complains about the setting. No one ever complains. Everyone just embraces it full throttle, and that is exactly the way to play Slay Industries. So I think it's a game I find very easy to run. In a way, I find it very easy to tell that kind of dystopian, bureaucratic nightmare story. And in a way, that bleeds into the ways I run games like Wraith the Oblivion for one of my Patreon groups, along with other dystopian nightmare worlds. But yeah, Slay Industries has a place at the top for me. Next up would be The World Below. And I know, I talk about The World Below RPG a lot on this YouTube channel. It's the only one I get royalties for. But this comes from a place of honesty. I've been running a World Below campaign now for around 2 years, I think it is. And The World Below is a game where you can go through a lot of exploration, both in character and, I guess, existential and wider. You know, you can discover lost temples and communities. You can uncover the archaeology of the world above. You can understand your environment and maybe come to harmony with it. You can build roads and safe tunnels, bridges, if you like, from one settlement to the other. So there's a lot of discovery there, but there's also an awful lot of threat and terror. And the group that I've been running this for consistently really perfectly balances that horror and wonder that exists in the world below. That you never know that if you knock through this wall, if you're going to find treasure or if you're going to find something that wants to eat your face. And so there's a certain fatalistic attitude that my players have adopted with their characters in this world below game that I really have come to enjoy. Now, this is a group who have played The World Below generationally. We're now on our 3rd generation of characters in this game. This is the first time we are having characters whose generation was born in a settlement distinct from the original 2. I made a separate video where I spoke about this, total party kills and so on, but this happened in The World Below, and it's often seen as either a feat of accomplishment at a convention or a rocks fall, everybody dies bad thing. But in The World Below, it led to such a magnificent piece of storytelling, not just on my part, but on the part of the players. You see, their home settlement was under threat from basically all angles. There was an army of Hemexi who were going to come, enslave, drain. There was no good outcome if the Hemexi reached there. And because of certain decisions that had been made, and I'm talking to you right now, Alex, because certain decisions had been made that resulted in there will be no negotiation with the Hemexi. There will be no diverting them to another settlement. There will be no grabbing the secret magical weapon that may be required, but instead was traded away for various trinkets. But we won't get into that right now because I'm speaking directly to a player, and that's unfair for the viewers who don't understand it, other than the fact that it was a very bad decision. This left our characters in something of a pickle. You see, this horde of Himexi, the chaos storms were brewing, the calm season was about to fall upon the settlement. The Himexi would not be deterred by the chaos storms, but any guards, any human, any Antisia, any Makaru who were trying to remain out in the halls would undoubtedly sacrifice themselves or be obliterated for no good reason if they remained out there. This left our party of adventurers, our explorers, our delvers, our player characters, to make the decision as to what they were going to do. And ultimately, what they decided was they would destroy the tunnel. They would get as many of the Himexi in there as they could, and then Thermopylae or Samson, like in the temple, they destroyed the whole thing. They unleashed as much chaotic magic as they could because they wanted to roll and roll and roll on the chaotic retaliations table and see what horrendous after effects they could spawn, because there's no limit to how much chaos sorcery you can put out. It's just what repercussions are you prepared to take as a result of it. And in this case, well, our characters wanted to just essentially destroy the network of tunnels that connected their settlement to any other, knowing that by doing so they would be closing in their home. They would be reducing the chances of their survival over the seasons, but at least they would save them from destruction now. And so we had floods, and we had magma, and we had monsters spawning into being, but most importantly of all, by the end, they collapsed the caves on top of themselves, on the enemy, and made their settlements practically inaccessible to the Himexi for several generations to come. They killed their characters. And that was that. As a story, this was the first generation. They'd been playing them for quite some time, and this was a heroic, meaningful way to end that first generation. Everyone needed a breather afterwards. Everyone needed a drink. Everyone needed to chat it over. And by the end of that session, we decided we want to carry on playing, but we want to be a generation on. We want to be, like 20 years later. We want to be the descendants of those previous characters. And we want to, well, find the remains of those who fell before, new excavations. And naturally, it being the world below, they wouldn't be able to find bodily remains. Bodily remains are absorbed, eaten, disappeared. But they'd be able to find the items, they'd be able to find the ledgers, they'd be able to find the maps. They'd be able to retrace the steps of their ancestors and continue with their adventures. And that's what we did, and it created such a fantastic feeling. You get that same thing sometimes when you play other generational games like Pendragon or A Song of Ice and Fire, but this was the best version of it I have ever ran. The players absolutely fantastic, despite errors made. Now, going way back, one of my favourite RPGs, one of my best RPGs that I ever ran was A Vampire the Dark Ages Chronicle. I recently got done running a Dark Ages Chronicle for the Ticking Time Bob YouTube channel, which you should check out. All 3 parts of that Chronicle are up there on Bob's YouTube channel. If you want to see that, check out Crown of Thorns on Ticking Time Bob. It's a great show. But the one I'm thinking of is the one that kind of made the bones of this YouTube channel. Back when I was starting off the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires, I was also recapping a chronicle of Vampire the Dark Ages. So back then it was Dark Ages Vampire. This was before V20 Dark Ages came out. And this was a chronicle that saw our characters really follow along the doom of Clan Salubri, explore the baronies of Avalon, so the British Isles, under the vampiric hegemony of Mithras, ultimately leave the British Isles as envoys, as diplomats, who had to find an ally for Mithras against the possibility of hostilities during the upcoming, well, the Inquisition, the Tremere, and so forth. And the characters therefore travelled to the courts of love. They went through France. They got involved in all kinds of plots there, got to know various NPCs. Their characters went through various evolutions. They went down to the Italian city-states. Their intention, after basically examining the map and making various decisions at a very high level, was they needed to make their way all the way to the voivodate of the Zimishi and form an alliance between Mithras and the voivodate, so that the fiefdoms of the Black Cross in the middle, who Mithras identified as his chief threat, would basically be put to heel. And this was an unusual alliance that doesn't really come up in the RPG proper, but the way the players played it, the way they played their role of diplomats, and again, as I say, the evolutions of the vampires that we saw as they made their way all the way from Britain across Europe, through Italy, up into the Balkans and into Romania and so forth, was brilliant. This was another multi-year chronicle. This took a long time. I think if I look back at all the chronicles I've ever ran, it's probably the longest continuous chronicle I've ever ran. Obviously, the World Below one is at risk of catching up with it now. But I thought, yeah, at the time, these were players I didn't know very well. By the end, I'm sorry, I'm distracted now because there's a naked man on the other side of my window. And I know that is a very strange tangent. But, yep. Okay, well, I'm going to keep looking at me. That's all right. I've been recording for 16 minutes now. I'm not going to stop and start again. I'm not young enough to do that anymore. I'll let people guess in the chat why there's a naked man on the other side of my window. Anyway, Vampire the Dark Ages, fantastic, great chronicle, very much trend-setting for me, and got me to know some fantastic people, allowed me to run for them for many years after, and I still run for several of them now. They are still in my regular weekly gaming group. That was a place where bonds were formed, or forged, between people, and he's gone now, don't worry. The fourth I would go into is Eclipse Phase, and Eclipse Phase is a game I ran for my in-person gaming group. It's a game I ran for my Patreons. I should say, by the way, when speaking about Slay Industries, I will sometimes use BPNs, the missions that I run for my in-person groups, for some of my Patreon groups, just to see how they do it differently. I will sometimes use elements from my vampire games for other vampire games, and so on. Eclipse Phase is a game I kind of ran in synchronicity, one for my in-person group, one for one of my Patreon groups. And it started with the same concept, that New Mumbai, a colony on Luna, on the moon, was nuked, was glassed entirely, fusion bombed by Luna Lagrange, the defensive pact that surrounds Luna and Earth. For reasons, they basically said there was some kind of outbreak, a Titan outbreak, even though there was very little evidence to say that that was true. And our characters were responsible for finding out the reasons behind it, but specifically finding out why there was a delay between the launch of both attacks on New Mumbai. What was the reason for the delay? To investigate Colonel Pan of the Lunar Lagrange Alliance, to basically find out what the personal reasons were, whether there was a conspiracy, whether someone got out of New Mumbai before it was glassed, did they bring a virus with them? And it became an Eclipse Phase scenario campaign that saw them go from Luna to habitable stations to Mars stations to the outer system. And I absolutely adore Eclipse Phase's mood. I love its aesthetic. I love the playable options. I love the various competing factions that exist in Eclipse Phase. And there's certain elements of Eclipse Phase I think work really well if you sort of transpose them into Trinity Continuum Aeon as well. But this Eclipse Phase game that I was running in 2 venues for 2 different groups ran very differently for both of them. Each of them, they went in different directions, they explored different things. But because I had kind of penned the skeleton of the mystery beforehand, I already knew what the major beats needed to be, but how they got there and the discoveries they made and the decisions they made, the alliances and who they went up against, really became very interesting for me as almost an observer. As a GM, my favourite thing is to react to the unexpected. I like players to do things I'm not anticipating and to come up with something that builds on their idea. You know, basic improv, really. And both of these Eclipse Phase groups were really good at that. And they weren't afraid of having characters die. This is one of those excellent things about Eclipse Phase. Character morph death does not result in ego death. It just means you have to find a new body. And so you can literally throw your body out into the void to accomplish something, and we saw this happen on multiple occasions, or ships blow up, or other such events. But we got to explore things like indentured servitude, slavery, ego slavery, essentially. We got to see what happens when a Titan runs loose on a space station. The answer, nothing good. We got to see the outcome of what occurs with an annihilation, an extinction level event for a colony. And we got to get involved in the political intrigues of Eclipse Phase 2, which is a game I cannot recommend enough. I think it is absolutely fantastic, and if you don't already own a copy, you should. All of the games I'm talking about, you should buy copies because they are absolutely wonderful. Now, the last one I am going to mention is Cult Divinity Lost. I have ran a lot of Cult Divinity Lost for Red Moon role-playing. It has to be said. And I'm currently running one group of on my Patreon through a Cult Divinity Lost story as well. That I made a video about, in fact, the Trailer Park Blues scenario that I wrote. But my favourite one that I have ran so far was probably, and it's a close run thing because I've enjoyed all of my Red Moon role-playing ones. My favourite one is probably It Started and Ended with Screams. It was the perfect group. They had the perfect reactions. Actually, you know what? I'm going to scratch that. While it was perfect, and it was, believe me, it was, I'm actually going to replace it with Tapestry of Suburbia. And that might be the most recent cult game I ran for Red Moon role-playing, but hear me out. There is a magical quality, an element that It Started and Ended with Screams was missing, that the Summit was missing, that the Shunned was missing, that was present in Tapestry of Suburbia, and that's Bridget Jeffries. You know, and maybe it's unfair of me, I don't often call out specific players, but I have mentioned in several videos now that Bridget Jeffries, as a player, is probably one of the best reactors that I have ever encountered. She jumps when she needs to. She gets emotional when she needs to. You know, she gets sad. She gets excited. She screams. You know, she basically does everything you could possibly want from a player in a horror game. And that isn't to take away from the other players who appeared in The Shunned by any means. Not The Shunned, Tapestry of Suburbia. Everyone did a fantastic job. But this was my introduction, I think, to Bridget. I believe it was. And immediately I thought, wow, this is someone who really knows horror. And between her and the other players in the game, I did want to spotlight her. We got to tell a really sick and insidious story with very strong Nightmare on Elm Street influences, though I tried to make it more mundane than Nightmare on Elm Street, more abusive in a way, if that makes sense. more about white-collar concealment of abuse, or whether it's domestic, whether it's sexual, and it just became a game that was utterly drenched in mood, a certain sourness, the kind of sourness you get when you bite into a sandwich and find that there's human flesh inside. You know the feeling. And yes, between Bridget, Craig, and Matthias, that game was absolutely wonderful to run. Ended bleakly, started bleakly. It was bleak, but it was a brilliant story, and probably one of the shortest campaigns of all the ones I'm talking about here. But just such a joy to run some true horror, gloves off horror. Now, there are many, many runners-up to these top 5 of Slay Industries, The World Below, Vampire the Dark Ages, Eclipse Phase, and Cult Divinity Lost. I have ran Horror on the Orient Express so many times now, I've actually lost count. I am currently running Masks of Nyarlathotep for Red Moon Roleplaying, and that is going so well. I ran Wraith the Oblivion for one Patreon group, and that was an utterly amazing group to play with. I'm currently running Regency Cthulhu for a Patreon group, and they are magnificent. Pendragon, the Great Pendragon campaign as well. Gosh, so many. I'm running Curseborn for, I think, 3 different groups right now, and they all have such different takes on the material that is really eye-opening. But it's too early, I think, to appraise them as some of the best games I've ran. We'll have to see. I'll get the feedback from the players on that. And I've ran loads of World of Darkness games. I've ran loads of D&D and Pathfinder and all kinds of RPGs. But those 5 stand out for me. Slay Industries, The World Below, Vampire the Dark Ages, Eclipse Phase, and Cult Divinity Lost. There's a certain horror element that runs through, a vein that runs through all of those. But I hope that my telling you about these games will make you check some of them out. I'll make sure all 5 of them are linked in the video description below. As always, check out The World Below more than any other if you can. And if you already have a copy, leave a rating and review. I am going to follow this video up next week with my favourite games to have played over the last however long. And let's see if there's any surprises in there. Thank you very much for watching. I will be seeing you next time.